All right, Hare Krishna. So this is the sixth part of 8. We're going to be covering the fifth verse today, and next time the sixth and the seventh and eighth we'll do together, since those are two varieties of Krishna prema. And so today is the last. This is the last stage of what's called sadhana bhakti. The verse today describes the last stage of sadhana bhakti, or bhakti in practice, and then you go to bhakti in perfection. Sadhya bhakti. So this is the verse that's introducing today's verse, right? That as it's described in chapter 20, Antya-lila of Chaitanya Charitamrita, where it records Lord Chaitanya not composing the Siksastaka, but reciting it for his own happiness. And so it says, in great humility, considering himself a conditioned soul of the material world, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu again expressed his desire to be endowed with service to the Lord. This is after the fourth verse. This is heading towards the fifth. And then the next verse this is today's verse, the fifth verse of the Siksastaka, Antya-lila chapter 20, text 32. Ainanda tanuja kinkaram patitamam vishame bhavam buddho kripaya tava pada pankaja sitadhuri sadrisham vichintaya. And then the word for word is, you have Nanda Tanuja, right? This Anuja that means younger, right? So he's the younger son of Maharaj Nanda. Balaram is the older one. Nanda Tanuja, Krishna is being addressed as that. Kinkaram is servant, and it's Kinkara is a king means to say what, right? What is what? Kim is what, and then kara means the person who says what. Like, what do you want me to do? What do you want? What can I do for you? So that's why why a servant is called a kinkara, someone who says what would you have me do? And then he says, patitam, fallen, patitam me, I'm fallen. And Vishame Baba Ambado, the ocean of this material world, the ocean of nescience. And then by Kripaya Tava, this is by your causeless mercy, Pada Pankaja, Pada's feet, and Pankaja's lotus, your lotus feet. Stita is like standing, situated at Aduli Sadrasham, like a particle of dust. Vichintaya, kindly consider. That's what how the verse is going. And then the translation, Prabhupada's translation from the Chaitanya Charitamrita is, O my Lord, O Krishna, O son of Maharaj Nanda, I am your eternal servant, but because of my own fruitive acts, I have fallen into this horrible ocean of nescience. Now please be causelessly merciful to me. Consider me a particle of dust at your lotus feet. And then Lord Chaitanya reflects on that after reciting it. He reflects on that. The next verse in the 20th chapter is, I am your eternal servant, but I forgot your lordship. Now I have fallen into the ocean of nescience and have been conditioned by the external energy. Lord Chaitanya continues to speak, and then he says, again, another verse, he says, be causelessly merciful to me by giving me a place with the particles of dust at your lotus feet, so that I may engage in the service of your lordship as your eternal servant. So you remember at the conclusion of the previous verse, which was the stage of ruchi or taste, he was asking, I just want your devotional service, life after life. So this is deepening that mood, indication of a deepening of that mood. Let me be a particle of dust at your feet. And so this represents, according to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the stage of asakti, which is translated as attachment, or it's like almost an addiction. It's like really strong attachment. You're addicted to Krishna. Asakti. And in the Madhurya Kadambini, it describes something about what this stage of asakti looks like. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he says, after this, when ruchi, taste, so this is that previous verse, which has bhajan, hearing, chanting, and other devotional activities as its object of relish, reaches its extreme depth and makes Krishna the object of relish, that is called asakti, or attachment. So previously, at the stage of ruchi, the devotee feels this great happiness, like we had previously in nishta, steadiness. The devotee is able to engage in service or engage in Krishna conscious activities continuously. But then as that kind of concentrates, there becomes this really powerful higher taste that manifests. And so all the different activities of Krishna consciousness become really, really tasteful. Right? And so so there's a real encouragement to do them. It's a pleasure to do them. You want to do them. But it says then, but as it deepens, the focus becomes more and more on Krishna. We're experiencing the higher taste, and of course, Krishna is always there in all the different stages of devotional service, but really the concentration on it becomes really intense upon Krishna. I'm doing this for you. I'm thinking about you. Becoming very attached to Krishna. So it's, obviously all the chanting and all the devotional activities are also intensifying, but the focus is on Krishna. Not just, chanting is very nice, or service is nice, or the association is nice, but it really becomes this focus on Krishna. And so you become attached, or even addicted, you might say, to Krishna. So this is the change from ruchi to asakti. And then in the Bhagavatam, in the second chapter, there's also a description of the different stages of bhakti. And in the it's the second chapter here, 18th verse, when we're every time we hear Bhagavatam class, right? People nashta prayesha badaleshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttamasloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. This naishtaki, you can kind of see is nishta, steadiness. Prabhupada translates as irrevocable, but it refers to that stage of steadiness. So when the nashta prayesh, the abhadrishu, the inauspicious things, those are the anarthas. And it says, and here it says almost to nil, right? So because they're substantially destroyed, and that allows you to transition to nishta from the previous one where you have anartha nivritti. So this is describing anartha nivritti, establishing you in nishta. But there are some effects still of the offenses that linger. They're not completely destroyed, but they're destroyed enough substantially that no longer are you unsteady. Remembering Krishna and serving Krishna, and then going back into material things, back and forth. The unsteadiness has gone away because they're substantially destroyed. And then it says, so then you get, at that point you get nishta. And in the next verse, this is the translation, by regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Then in the next verse, you get it says, at that time, tada, at that time, Raja Tamo Bhava, mode of passion and the mode of ignorance. All right. And so along with kama and greed, lust and desire, lobha, hankering, and other such things that come with that, with those two modes, it says that the mind becomes unaffected by them, and it becomes situated, stitam sattve, in goodness, and becomes very satisfied, prasiddhati, fully satisfied. So that a change happens when you reach after Nishta. And so the translation, as soon as irrevocable loving service is established in the heart, the effects of nature's modes of passion and ignorance, such as lust, desire, and hankering, disappear from the heart. Thus, then the devotee is established in goodness, and he becomes completely happy. According to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, this is, the transition from Nishta, up through Ruchi and Asakti. So that's starting to happen at the stage of Nishta. Certainly the effects of passion and ignorance are reduced. That's allowing you to have the steadiness, but they're still quite there. And so after that's established and deepens, that takes you to Ruchi, where these other factors are reduced even more. And then at Asakti, it's really almost complete. Because what happens, and we have the experience of the higher taste, even in the beginning of our Krishna consciousness, and at every stage, you'll feel that, but if we're unsteady in our service, then it comes and goes, it comes and goes, and comes and goes. So at the stage of Nishta, because in the higher taste is this actually, it's an experience of yourself and of Krishna. The soul has been covered. And so both ourselves and Krishna have disappeared from our eyes, even though he's the center of everything. The Maya has created this atmosphere where we can have a separate existence. And so as we make a connection with Krishna, we feel a little something of him, his presence, his beauty, and we feel a little something of ourselves. And at Nishta, this doesn't come and go so much. And so there's a tendency then to be drawn further in. Oh, this is really nice. And so once you reach that stage, it tends to want to intensify. It kind of pulls you downhill. Right? The power of the higher taste really can take over. Before, yes, we remember the higher taste and we're attracted to it. And so it brings us back also. Even when we forget about Krishna, when our mind goes on something else and we do something not so connected with him, and as we do in Anishtita Sadhana Bhakti. And so that still makes a difference for us. But when it becomes continuous, then it has a tendency to draw us in and deepen. So once we reach Nishta, it becomes easier to make advancement because there's not so many obstacles. And so Krishna's attractiveness really can pull us without so much, so having to fight so much. We're not struggling against it so much. So then I wanted to read you Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on this verse, because it also explains ultimately about Sakti. There's a little something here. He says, the mind is not transformed, it's anavadam, by such agitations of lust, greed, and other qualities such as anger, illusion, and hatred, which arise from rajas and tamas. And so that's a bhavaha in the verse. This means that by lack of taste for material objects, the state of ruchi, the appearance of relishing in hearing, chanting, and other processes arises. So that's what happens once you reach that stage of nishta, then these things start to back off and you deepen. It starts to become very tasteful. And then he says in the previous state, that means nishta though, still nishta, the mind was pierced by the sharp arrows of lust, greed, etc. How could the mind be satisfied in that state? Remember, at nishta, it just means that you remain steady. There's temptations, but it's like the Gita says, vyavasa atmaka buddhi, there's a resolute determination. He mentions that if you have these other material desires, you can't have vyavasa atmaka buddhi, a clear resolution or intelligence, a focus. And so they're still there at the stage of nishta, but you're focused enough to realize that no, I want to resist them and I want to continue my service. They don't carry you away as they did in the stage of anishtita sadhana bhakti. But he says, even in that case, when they're still nagging at you, says, how could the mind be satisfied in that state? He says, how could the mind attain real taste for chanting in that state? A person afflicted with pain cannot relish food. After this, the mind becomes fixed in the Shuddha Sattva deity of the Lord. He says this is what Sattva means in the way he sees it in the verse. This is the stage of asakti. So even in the stage of ruchi, right? We said nadanam najanam nasundarim, right? That I don't want. So the things are still coming up, right? That the material desires are still coming up, but they're not as they're we say, no, I don't want them. I don't want them. I don't want them. I don't want that. I don't want that. It's easier to resist. In the stage of nishta, it's a little bit harder to resist, but you do because of the of your firm understanding and resolution. In ruchi, the activities are so tasteful that when the things come up, it's like, okay, no, I don't want that. I don't want, but it's disturbing. You still have to deal with them. They're coming up, and you have to say, no, I don't want that. Come on. The mind is still giving you some disturbance. So it says when the mind becomes fixed, right, in remembering the Lord, he says this word sattva means in the deity of the Lord, Shuddha Sattva deity of the Lord. Krishna, Krishna is the deity of Shuddha Sattva, the transcendence. Because at this point they're not fully transcendent. This is still in the range of practice. The false ego has not been removed yet completely, but it says that we're in the mode of goodness, and we're focused on the Lord of the mode of pure goodness. Who's the Lord? Is pulling us forward. So there's a deep attachment then for the Lord develops in this state, this stage of bhakti. That's what's being described. And here he says, he explains further, he says, before the stage of asakti, the devotee, realizing that his mind has been overpowered by material objects and desires, after putting forth deliberate effort, withdraws his mind and fixes it on the Lord's form, qualities, and activities. In the stage of asakti, however, absorption of the mind in the Lord is automatic, without effort. So this is the real change that's happening here. That even the material desires aren't even a problem any longer. In fact, it says that if somehow, somebody at the stage of nishta, may find that their mind is carried away by some material desire. Now they won't give up their service, but it'll be taken away. They're trying to remember Krishna somehow. We've all had that experience chanting Hare Krishna, and poof, mind pops in and just takes us away. So even at the stage of nishta, that can happen. The mind can go away. But he says at the stage of ruchi, even if somehow or other somebody is thinking of something material, boom, it goes back to Krishna. They just can't stay away from Krishna. Even if somehow there's some other thought, boom, goes back to Krishna. It's magnetic that way. Because it's the reverse of everything we've experienced previously. It's just automatic. And if somehow there's a disruption, boom, just goes back. They don't have to stop and say, oh, this is not good. Let me remember Krishna again. It's just like they can't forget him for any length of time at all. So this is asakti, this addiction, right? Deep attachment for Krishna. And then he says sometimes the devotees in this stage are criticized, especially by materialistic people. They think they've lost their minds and don't have a good priority in their lives. But he says, but for the devotee, far from considerations of respect and disrespect, having fallen into the current of the great celestial river of attachment, asakti, to the Lord, will simply continue his attempts to come closer to the Lord. He doesn't care what anybody else thinks. This is the condition of somebody in asakti. And then he gives some other beautiful things where he says, at the stage of asakti, the creeper of bhakti bears clusters of buds. These buds will in no time become flowers at the stage of bhava, and then fruits at the stage of prema. So this is really getting someplace at this stage. And then he says something really, really amazing. He says, asakti polishes the mirror of the antakarana This means like, the mind, intelligence, and ego, mental faculties is what Vanaswami says. To such a condition that a reflection of the Lord may suddenly be visible there. Right? We have the Cheto Darpan, the Marjanam, the mirror of the heart. Become so cleansed that you see a little reflection of Krishna. So we're really getting a much deeper experience of Krishna. And this is what happens. Even when we, at very beginning stages, people will understand what the higher taste means, because you're somehow in contact with Krishna through service with the holy name, or hearing about Krishna, or even just associating with devotees. Krishna somehow is present. But, for the most part, especially when we're still on the initiative stage, Krishna is he's still kind of an abstract concept to us. We don't have a deep experience of him. We have maybe moments when we feel something really powerful, but we don't have this really, really, really deep understanding of who Krishna is. And so the effect is less. We don't appreciate Krishna. We don't realize how fortunate we are dealing with Krishna, because it's kind of conceptual. A lot of it's still conceptual. It's not so tangible. So here it's like, suddenly you're having the reflection of the Lord is there. It's becoming a lot more tangible, a lot more palpable, a lot more immediate. And so it's just drawing you in, really intensely. In his Bhajana Rahasya, Bhaktivinoda Thakur quotes these couple verses from the Bhagavatam as being the sort of mood that somebody in a Sakti has, as a description of them. And he puts that under, and he has like his Bhajana Rahasya connects the Siksastaka with the various stages of bhakti, and with the Ashtakaliya Leela. He correlates all those things together. And so he quotes in there this Canto 10, Chapter 14, Text 8. My dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds, and offering you respectful obeisances with his heart, words, and body, is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim. So this is the mood of somebody in that condition. And then 11th Canto, Chapter 2, Text 43. My dear King, the devotee who worships the lotus feet of the infallible personality of Godhead with constant endeavor, thus achieves unflinching devotion, detachment, and experienced knowledge. So the real key word here is experienced. This isn't theoretical. You have an experience of Krishna. Just like you had the reflection on the heart. So it's something that's not theoretical or conceptual any longer, but you get a powerful experience of Krishna. In this way, the successful devotee of the Lord achieves supreme spiritual peace. So he's saying, at this stage of a sakti, it's you're making the jump to transcendence. So many of the material obstacles are just gone, and your focus on Krishna is very deep and very intense. And so there's an incredible feeling of peace and happiness there. It's deepening from that already in ruchi. You just want your devotional service birth after birth. I don't want anything. That's pretty deep. This is even further. It's really powerful stuff. And then this is something that Bhaktivinoda Thakur was writing in his Bhajan Rahasya, how he was explaining a little bit about how the bhakti, how the Siksastakam was corresponding to bhajan. And he says the pastimes of Krishna are not within the Siksastaka; they're not described. By bhajan, using these verses, the pastimes will gradually appear. So our position is we're not so much bhajananandis, we're doing bhajan, but who are preaching, that was Prabhupada gave us. But anyway, it's still informative here. First, meditate on the first verse for some days. Then with the second verse, one should become expert. With the first 4 verses, that's where we covered so far, one should make the bhajan mature. So this is, and this, here's the interesting thing, and I'm not sure how much applicability it's going to have for us, but it says with the 5th verse, one should choose a siddhadeya, your spiritual form. Starting to take shelter of Radha's lotus feet in that body by this verse, one gradually advances. So what happens is that actually at that point, you can have a very, very powerful and real intuition about your eternal connection with Krishna. You begin to have a specific flavor. So he says that, as we move up here, we get a natural feeling of servitorship. He says there's a natural feeling of general servitorship, that more and more you feel like you're Krishna servant, as is mentioned here in this verse. I'm your kinkaram. There's a general feeling of that, but as that deepens, there can be an actual realization of what your eternal connection with Krishna is, which opens this path to Raga Nuga, Sadhana Bhakti. So it's really a profound situation. Like, before, if we try to imagine, I'd like to be a cowherd boy or this or a gopi, it just has no basis. It's just mental speculation. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, without actual realization, trying to imagine a siddhadeya is just lead you into illusion. It's sahajism. But it becomes something that you really can, it becomes palpable to you. This is how close you're coming to transcendence. Your real self is coming out so much more vividly. See, both Krishna becomes more vivid and your real self comes out. This is what's happening along the course of devotional service, right? The soul is awakening, and the presence of Krishna, the veil that's keeping you from Krishna and your real self is reducing. And so at this point, you begin to have a real vision of who you are. It's really powerful stuff at this point. This is why these verses are really powerful. But when we first read them, and we think, oh yeah, I can feel that way. I'm in this material world, and I'm your servant Krishna. Please have mercy on me. This is like a deep, deep feeling for these people. So it's really important that we understand the different levels that the Siksastaka is on. We can read them and feel them, and they make an impression on us, right? Maybe when the reality comes, we'll know. I've heard Satyanandana Swami ask a question about this. What is the use of hearing pastimes and things that are above our ability to experience? And he says, well, it's like if you want to have a little stream. And of course, it's ultimately your stream of love of God. He says you can kind of dig the channel by hearing this. You understand how it flows and give you some idea, a vague idea what it looks like. So it makes impressions that can help you a little bit, but we can't really live in that condition at this point. So yes, it's a really profound state. This stage of asakti, where really Krishna is becoming so much more present, and also our real selves are becoming more and more awake and alive. So what I wanted to really bring up now is we've been talking, about, and we heard also about the 3rd verse, had these, qualities of humility, tolerance, compassion, forgiveness, and pridelessness. And Lord Chaitanya was saying that that with those qualities you can easily attain love of Godhead. And the reason that that's the case is because that's what bhakti looks like. Bhaktivinoda Thakur told us that those are intrinsic qualities of bhakti. They're not something that just could come up there at that stage and then are gone. They actually deepen. And each time we see Lord Chaitanya is more humble, feels humility, and then recites the next verse and the next verse. So you can see in this verse how someone at the stage of asakti is even more humble and lacks pride than the devotees at other stages. And it already said, like, even if people criticize him, he doesn't care. So all the tolerance and stuff is there, even deepening. And it's so clear in the verse, right? Here's somebody, he has this really, really high level of sadhana. His practice is very deep and rich. He's maybe even seeing Krishna, a reflection of Krishna on this, in his mind or in his heart. and his devotion is just going through the roof, right? And he describes himself, I've fallen into the horrible ocean of nescience. Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur says that even at the previous stages, you lament how you were so disconnected from Krishna. You were lamenting all the obstacles, because now you realize how valuable Krishna is. This is not the end of that realization in any means, but the realization of who Krishna is and how wonderful it is that you're connected with him is now increasing so much that you really regret all the wasted time. And you're also aware, he's also aware that he's not free yet. They're also, I'm in this horrible ocean of nescience. So they're not feeling so special or so advanced, right? They have a right. You think, well, if you could do that, you'd really be somebody, And it's so deep that they may have a real idea of their relationship with Krishna, their eternal relationship with Krishna. And what's he praying for? What's the person praying for? The devotee's praying for, let me be a speck of dust at your feet. Now think about that, right? We, in our much less advanced condition, may, have fantasies. Oh, I'd like to be this, or I'd like to be that in the spiritual world. Think about that. I want to be a cowherd boy. I want to be, Krishna's parents. I want to be, I want to be a gopi. We can even, we may indulge in, such thoughts. Right? And here's somebody who knows what they are. And he's not saying, let me. So maybe the person's a cowherd boy. They say, please, Krishna, I want to play with you. I want to herd the cows with you. It would make sense, from one sense, for them to do that. They know who they are. Why don't they say, please, Krishna, save me from whatever obstacle there is. Let me do that. But no, they want to be a speck of dust at Krishna's feet. This is because of their much more palpable realization of who Krishna is. How wonderful Krishna is. And so for them, he says, if he's at the feet, right, there'll be the chance to constantly serve. So even as a speck of dust that can constantly serve, this would be such a wonderful thing for them. They see how wonderful Krishna is. They don't care about wow. But the more that we realize how special Krishna is, how wonderful Krishna is, how incredible it is, and how there's no way that we could deserve a connection with him, the more that we feel tiny. The more that we're just happy to have some connection, any connection. It's just simply mind-blowing. So in our point of view, Krishna is, still a little bit conceptual. So we think, yeah, we want to be this, we want to be that. We're not appreciative enough of who we're dealing with and how wonderful that is. But the person who really has this realization does. So they become even more humble, way more humble than us. And maybe a speck of dust. You'd expect them to want more. We would. Right? That doesn't happen. And then again, look what he says. Tava kripa, by your prophet, is causeless mercy. Right? So here's this person, they're serving so intensely. They've gone through so many levels of purification. The remembrance of Krishna is just like, it's like an addiction. And they don't claim any credit. They're not thinking, yeah, I'm really advancing. They feel just as helpless. They feel more helpless than we do. We still think that we can, if we learn this, if we do this, that we can earn advancement. That we have the power to free ourselves. But we know that, but we really know, at least intellectually, although because we can't give up our pride, we know intellectually that it's Krishna who frees the bonds. Krishna says in the Gita, right? His material energy is very, very, very difficult to overcome. But his devotees can do it. Why? Because he turns it off. Krishna turns it on, he can turn it off. He's the one doing all the real purification. We're just, cooperating. We have to chant. We have to do our devotion, our sadhana. We have to do these things, right? Because that shows Krishna. I mean, we should do about the real gratitude and interest, right? And if Krishna sees, yes, we want, then he tries to. We want to come closer to him, genuinely want to. Then he facilitates that. He does all the, he's the one that cleans up all the dirt. And so really, it's he gets the credit, not us. He's so kind. Our participation is comparatively minimal. And this and even here in this case, when this person is so deeply and intensely serving Krishna, they're seeing that my participation is minimal. I need your mercy to continue to advance. I'm begging for your mercy. Not thinking, yeah, my son is great. I'm seeing you sometimes, yeah. So the feeling of being special, better than others is not there. The feeling of those two things really. I need to be somebody. These are really these are powerful things, for the ego. There's really three things that are really powerful. One, you want to be somebody. One, you want to take credit, and then the third, there's this being isolated. Under the covering of Maya. That's the false ego really facilitates that, blocking out Krishna, blocking out our real self. And this is what Prabhupada says here. This is the purport to Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 531. The chief function of the false ego is godlessness. When a person forgets his constitutional position as an eternal subordinate part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and wants to be happy independently, he functions mainly in two ways. He at first attempts to act fruitively for personal gain or sense gratification, and after attempting such fruitive activities for a considerable time, when he is frustrated, he becomes a philosophical speculator and thinks himself to be on the same level of God. I really wanted to emphasize the first part here. The chief function of the false ego is godlessness. When a person forgets his constitutional position as an eternally subordinate part and parcel of the Supreme and wants to be happy independently. So the false ego facilitates that desire to feel separate, to block Krishna out, feel independent. The ego wants, so in that case, we want to be somebody, and we want to take credit for whatever we seem to accomplish. And so what it seems to me is that at the stage of asakti, this veil of the false ego that blocks our vision of Krishna and blocks our own real self is becoming, more and more. At first, I think it's a little translucent. Now it's becoming almost transparent. You can almost see through it. There's not such a blockage anymore. So it really is the reason why this, this humility and pridelessness, and all the other ones that go with it, compassion and tolerance and forgiveness, are so important, is because this is the reduction of the false ego. Right here, it keeps coming back to this verse this comes from the second canto in the Bhagavatam, but it's quoted here in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi 825. If one's heart does not change, tears do not flow from his eyes. This is the next stage, Baba. His body does not shiver, and his bodily hairs do not stand on end as he chants the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. It should be understood that his heart is as hard as iron. In the Bhagavatam, Prabhupada translates it as steel framed, and the word ashma, we even ashma means rock. So it's hard. It's hard like iron or steel or rock or stone hardened. This is due to his offenses at the lotus feet of the Lord's holy name. So we have this. So the whole process really of devotional service is the reduction and eventual elimination of false ego. Now, Prabhupada, he always quoted that verse about the upadis, sarvopadi vinirmuktam, and he did it in an unusual way, actually, because the way it comes into our line is through Rupa Goswami in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He quotes it right after the Anyabilashita Shunyam verse describing Uttama Bhakti, which is a verse of his own composition. And so he was looking for a scriptural reference that would say the same thing to corroborate his, to show that his composition was authorized. It wasn't something he'd concocted. And so so Prabhupada usually says that the devotional service makes you free from designations, upadis, but even in his translation of that in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he mentions how Rupa Goswami was looking at it, right? The Sarvopadi Vinirmuktam was like not having any ulterior motives. It was the same as Anyabalashta Shunyam. But Prabhupada said that devotional service removes all of the upadis or designations, and that's because I think he was highlighting the necessity of removing the false ego. As long as we falsely identify with anything except, being a servant of Krishna, that's ego. That's for the false ego. We have our false identity. And as long as we have that, we have some level of material attachment that can be very, very, very subtle at the stage of asakti. It's very, very subtle. But there's something still left that allows the false ego to remain. So in that way, and you can't have fully unmotivated, that Anyabilashta Shunyam doesn't really fully apply at any stage of sadhana. It gets more refined and more refined and more refined, but not until the stage of bhava does it really. Because as long as you have some material identification, as long as you're something besides a servant of Krishna, you'll need to feed that some way. You can't avoid it. There'll be some selfish motivation there. Like in the mode of goodness, there's really a high level of knowledge. You have compassion for other people. Like says in Satyaloka where Lord Brahma lives, it says the only misery is that people that they feel for the people who are in the lower planet and any place below them who are suffering. They feel the suffering of others. That's their only discontent. But even at a very high level of the material mode of goodness, where there isn't hardly anything of rajas or tamas, there's still, as it says in the Gita, there's a conditioning effect of the mode of goodness through knowledge and happiness. And so they feel that they're a little superior. They don't want to lord it over anybody. They want to help everybody, but they're feeling that I have this knowledge and this happiness because I'm superior, because I have this knowledge of, I'm in a superior condition. I'd like to help those who are suffering more because I don't want to see them suffer. But just that feeling of a little bit of pride is there. Very small, but it's there. And I'm still separate. And I'm somebody special is there. In a gross way, then we'll oftentimes want to, lord it over others, as Prabhupada says, want to show our superiority and that kind of stuff. But even in the very refined areas, there's that. And so if they do something good, they think, that makes me a good person. You feel there'll be some of that goes into the personal satisfaction. Very, very refined at that time, but it's happening that way. Yeah, so we are eternally, part and parcel of Krishna. We're connected with him. There's actually no way we can forget him or not acknowledge him. and feel like we do, isolated and disconnected without Krishna's help. And he does that through the agency of the false ego, right? And so when that happens, we have this, we have this situation where we, are on there's the duality of pride and low self-esteem. So if things are going well, then we feel really good about ourselves. And if not, we feel really bad about ourselves. This is the ego. This is the false ego happening there. But what really happens is, we're part and parcel of Krishna. We're connected with him and everything else. And everything else is, Krishna's creation and his energy. There's no way we can be separate. We're individuals, but we're not separate. This is the Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva. We're part of Krishna's, the whole that is Krishna, all that is, all of him and his energy. And as people begin to understand, as we can understand that how much affection Krishna has for his parts and parcels, including us, and how it's unconditional. Right? A really interesting thing happens. We get taken off this notion of pride and low self-esteem, because there's no way in the world that we can deserve the kind of love and affection that Krishna has for us. If we could deserve it, we could take pride in it. But the fact that it's there and it never goes away, no matter what. We've done so many things in so many lives, and Krishna is right there, reaching out his hand to us. And so the only way it's reasonable, the only way we can begin to understand why Krishna cares for us so deeply, right, is that his desire is to love. He's all powerful, but that's not what he does in his private life. He wants to love and be loved. And so his heart is so soft that even though we are tiny, he takes us as something special. So in that case, we can, we will, because of that, because it's so amazing, and that Krishna, it doesn't make any sense that Krishna could love us as he does, then we naturally feel tiny. And that's what happens as somebody here at the stage of Asakti, when they're beginning to have such a more robust experience of Krishna, they feel so tiny. They know they can't deserve it. They know it's all about Krishna, his deep and profound soft heart. But they also can feel secure in that. So they feel happy, joyful. And so it's the shrinking of this ego, thinking that we're isolated, thinking that we're unsafe, thinking that we're separate. And when that begins to shrink, when we start with gratitude, we get humbled by Krishna. As we advance in Krishna consciousness, it becomes more and more intense and becomes a natural feeling. That's why it's the path of littleness is bhakti, not the path of greatness. The more advanced the devotees become, the more they feel this sublime tension, where they're reciprocants of Krishna's mercy and love and care and protection, even though there's no objective way that should be. That's a beautiful feeling. All right, so I think that's what I've got for you here today. So let's comments, questions, complaints, corrections, additions, subtractions, anything. You're welcome to unmute and speak.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Sachin Prabhu.
I apologize. I didn't get to listen to it with full intent because I was cooking, but I will listen to it again, and it's a very deep topic. My question is, as a person, it gradually grows spiritually, and they feel themselves less and less qualified, which is a qualification of their advancement. They're they have studies of Siddhanta, such as what we're doing right now, or the tattva of, devotional service, as the Siksastaka says. But do they ever realize, oh, I'm now entering this phase because I feel this, this, and this? So I'm just trying to put that two together. As we gain this knowledge, and then as we gain spiritual maturity in some of these stages, do we see ourselves maturing objectively, or do we actually forget about it and just move through the motions of, the emotions of that stage?
Well, I'm sure they have the philosophical capacity to understand, but it doesn't mean anything to them, because what they're going to see is what's remaining, right? So they're not looking to see what has been accomplished or what has been tried, but they're looking, and of course they have great appreciation to Krishna because they're giving him credit for that. So that's the main thing, because it's not so important for them to think about that, because as Krishna gets the credit, usually we want to get credit for that. And the other thing is they see what's remaining. So here, this person at the stage of asakti, there's not much left, but it becomes incredibly painful for them because there's something left. There's still an obstacle. And it's because of, and they know it's because of them that they, because of their unwillingness to want to serve Krishna before they came under this control of Maya. And so all they're looking at is not how far they've come, but look what's remaining. That's really their focus. And of course, if they do realize that, then of course they're giving Krishna they're even more grateful to Krishna for having, taken so much of it away. So therefore also, again, they become more humble. Because if I'm there, it's not because of me. That doesn't make me special or accomplished. It's because Krishna was so kind to me. But still, look at this. I still have some ego left. How terrible is that? Even despite all the help. It's just kind of where their focus is going to be.
Are these stages clearly defined? Just like, for example, there's a mode of goodness, passion, ignorance, and we aren't, we kind of delve into different modes at times, and they're mixed. These stages look pretty distinct, but
there's a spectrum. They go gradually from one to the other. It doesn't like you pop from one to another. It's not quantized. Like here I am at Anishta Sadhana Bhakti, and then boop, omniscient. You slowly become more and more steady. And the same thing with Ruchi. We have taste now. We have taste even now, but as that becomes more continuous and deepens, there's a point at which you can say, oh, this is taste now. So it's not like you have no taste and boop, now you're at Ruchi. It's not like a quanta, right? Like when they one of the ways they first started with the quantum theory is with the photoelectric effect, that they'd have a little photoelectric thing that would produce electricity when you shine light on it. When they would increase the intensity of the light, it wasn't a smooth curve. It would have certain little jumps because light is in a bundle called a photon, right? So you can't smoothly do it. So this smoothly does it. And so at a certain point, so we can be very, very unsteady at the stage of Anishta Sadhana Bhakti. We can be more and more steady and more, and finally it meets the threshold of steadiness. And then, and so especially now when we're at the stage of Anishta Sadhana Bhakti, there's a lot of fluctuation back and forth because the modes are acting on us. And so there's a lot of fluctuation. But that's going to be less once we reach the stage of Nishta. There's going to be a lot less fluctuation. And that's why it's kind of downhill after that. But everything moves from one to the other. It's a spectrum. And at this point you say, okay, it's this. And another place you say it's this. It doesn't just jump from one to the other. Boop, now you're qualified, you go up to, to grade, now you're a sophomore, now you're a junior. Now it doesn't work like that. It's a smooth transition. I understand it.
And offenses to the holy name and to Vaishnavas will push us back lower no matter where we are. I guess, even at the stage of, even at the stage of asakti?
Yeah, there's not much likelihood of being offensive at that stage. But if it happens, yeah, it does. But you'll come back. You'll come back. The offense wears off. The effects of the offenses have a certain shelf life, and then they're gone, and you'll be back. But it's very once you're into these high level stuff, you're not likely to make offenses anymore.
I'm also going to Dandavad Giri Govardhan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
So yeah, I'm going to have to listen to this one again. It's kind of interesting. We're not interested in liberation, like the Damodar prayers. We're not into awe and reverence. We want this relationship with Krishna, and sometimes, there's some forgetfulness of who he is, but it seems like these stages where, there's this humility and feeling tiny and so dependent on Krishna. It's, it has almost some parallel lines to awe and reverence.
Yeah, but it's not so much Krishna's greatness here. Although, like for us, that is important. If we're trying to get through Anishta Bhakti Nishta, his power and opulence and stuff is important to us. We need to be able to feel protected. And then, but as Krishna's all attractive, because here the tattva is important to us. But as the connection with Krishna becomes more present, as we experience him more, then we don't care if it causes our destruction, right? When we'll get to the gopis, when they're just they're leaving their houses and passing by their superiors and stuff. They don't even care if they go to hell, even if this is a terrible sin and they're going to suffer, because they're attracted to Krishna. They have to please him no matter what, and any sacrifice doesn't matter. Right. So the smallness is a feeling that you cannot deserve Krishna. He's so wonderful, and so you're humbled by his attractiveness, his beauty, his concern for you. You don't feel you could possibly even begin to deserve that. So that kind of smallness that's coming from the understanding of his beauty and charm and his love. So it's not so much a tattva thing where he's all powerful and these kinds of things. It's not that kind of awe. Though, if you had that mood, that would also work. You would become humble that way. Say, oh, he's so great.
But you go through this process, and then you're embraced, you're accepted into his Leela, and then after going through this process, you're trusted with this forgetfulness of who you are and who he is, and you're still going to it's going to work, right?
Yeah, I mean, see, in the deep levels of prema, right, then it gets to be a little, it's still the same thing though, but it looks a little different. The cowherd boys may say, oh, you think you're such a tough guy. We can beat you wrestling and these kind of things, But this is just the Leela getting deeper. But like there's this pastime there's a book by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur that looks at the Ashtakaliya Leela, and he mentions the one thing that really just blew my mind was because the way of it, a lot of it's just over my head. I can't, I just kind of let that go through. But there's in the early morning, when the cowherd boys are coming to Nandagram to herd the cows with Krishna, there's one cowherd boy has a special little box. This is with jewels, a wooden box with jewels. And he goes to Mother Yashoda, who gives him these special sweets that he's going to give to Krishna when they're out herding the cows. And of course, the little cowherd boy knows that these are special sweets from Mother Yashoda. Krishna's just going to really enjoy that. And so it says, Vishwanath says he thinks that this box of sweets is worth thousands or millions of his lives. And so just to please Krishna is worth any sacrifice.
Right.
I feel such a
Right.
debt, all just to see Krishna.
Same with Yasoda. She's willing to die 1,000 deaths just to remove a bead of sweat from Krishna's
Yeah.
brow.
Yeah, so these things
So-
are so far above our station, but but it is. It's
You know,
like that. It's yeah.
Before this class, I was working on this. I was rewriting part of this illustrated Gita, and I was dealing with second chapter, 64th verse, and Prabhupada translates it: one who can control the senses by practicing the regulative principles of freedom can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord and thus become free from all attachment and aversion. And I have a dozen, more than a dozen, closer to 24 Gitas on my shelf. And so someone I also respect, who's a Sanskritist, translated this verse: but the integrated person who can control his mind at will and who, free from attraction and repulsion, accepts his worldly necessities through his controlled senses, attains tranquility. So in the verse, the Sanskrit word for that's being described here or translated as tranquility is prashadam, but Prabhupada, he's quoting it, he's translating it as the mercy of the Lord. And the next verse, prashade, a variation, also in this particular translation, when the heart is tranquil, Prabhupada, he translates it, receives the mercy of the Lord. So, I mean, so I did a paraphrase: is a person who becomes free from attachment and aversion by controlling and regulating his senses obtains peace by the mercy of the Lord. So I kind of blended them.
Mm-hmm. Makes it kind of clear.
So nothing, not a blade of grass moves, nothing happens without the mercy of the Lord. Without the sanction of the Lord or by the mercy of the Lord. So somebody pleases the Lord, he grants something.
Yeah.
And so, just being aware of that. I know in my own limited experience as a devotee, I was suffering mentally before I came to Krishna consciousness. And I have to say, things improved. I became more peaceful than I was.
Yeah.
And I was less tortured mentally than I was. At least and I feel in my heart that I've been given the, path forward, so I just have to kind of come in line with that. But anyway, we're all so fortunate, and it is interesting how these Siksastaka prayers come to the 5th Yashakti verse, where we're thinking just being a particle of dust at the feet, that's good enough,
Yeah, that's
all.
more than you could ever dream of. It would be such a fantastic result. And
Right.
it's at the stage where they can understand who they really are, so much. So it's really,
Right.
so you can really see the depth of the humility, and so you can understand the dynamic a little bit. So we can
Right.
begin that dynamic a little bit from where we are and be more appreciative of Krishna.
Right. Yeah, pride is
It's all
one.
about the reduction of the false ego and the eventual elimination. And the next verse, that hard heart melts. And Baba, it just melts. It's gone.
Right.
It's softening, 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 and then it just melts away. That's really all it is. That's the path of bhakti so much. It's just, I'm special. I get credit for everything. I'm isolated, and, I'm a disconnected being.
But it's emotional. It's not on reverence. It's not, you're emotionally involved somehow.
Because even in the awe and reverence, I mean, even Lord Vishnu is really beautiful. In any form, there's a fair amount of sweetness. It's just that in the Vrindavan Krishna, it's really intense sweetness. Even then, because if you're really, really, really super awe and reverence, then you won't think you can serve.
Right.
So the Lord Vishnu is he's still a very sweet form. He's still very attractive. If we had some clue about how powerful the Lord is, we would just be we just would be stunned. Couldn't do anything. So there's a fair amount of sweetness there, but in comparison, Krishna is the way most sweet. It takes it up another level, but there's a lot of sweetness there.
It's a high aspiration to want to be part of Krishna's Leela. That's ambitious.
Yeah, that's what I said. Well, to think we can deserve that is just ludicrous. But Krishna is inviting us. Lord Chaitanya is coming to us in these low conditions, say, "Hey, come on." So that shouldn't make us a little more humble. I don't know what would. It's amazing. We didn't deserve that. We can't earn that. We can't. We're not that special. Give me a break. Even the people in the Leela don't think they're that special. Because he's Krishna. How can we do that?
Yeah, just make me a particle of dust at your feet, and then you got your foot in the door.
Yeah.
And you're then whatever he's the one that grants everything.
Yeah. That's it. He's the one that gets all the credit. I mean, even for have it being a possibility, he gets all the credit. And so now, I mean, I think even now when we're in this Anishta Sadhana Bhakti stage, we still know something about Krishna. We've had some contact with Krishna. There's a lot for us to be grateful for right now. We've got so much more than we could ever have earned or deserved or expected. And so, let's stop being so insecure and having to puff ourselves up, and let's start being grateful. Not worry about what we're trying to aspire to and to attain, but appreciate what we already have, which is already more than can be purchased.
Yeah, that's the move. Yeah, right.
All right. Well, we're getting a little bit late. Is there anything else before we wrap up? Anybody else like to say something? All right, I don't want to keep you too long. So thank you again for being hardcore and still hanging with us. We're already most of the way through. 2 more to go. Hare Krishna.
Looking forward to it. Hare.